when you date men, you know exactly the type of guy that I'm talking about, where it's like, he's not good at anything and he just needs a hug. He's just a baby. And you're like, that's a 37-year-old man. That's not a baby. Like, that's not my baby.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luse, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. Quick question. Is 2026 the year of pathetic men? Well, according to writer and content creator Josh Laura, aka Tell the Bees on TikTok, it definitely is. He wrote a Substack article about it, and he's here with us today to break it all down. Josh Laura, welcome to It's Been a Minute.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
You have called 2026 the year of the pathetic man. How do you define a pathetic man, and why do you think that this year, of all years, is their year?
To define pathetic, I think obviously it's a very loaded word, but I do think that there is something about the specific interplay of emotionality and manipulation, right? I think that there is this element of like, this person is a little bit of a loser and they're trying to make it lovable. And in the piece, I was like, I feel like the wool is being pulled over my eyes. I feel like you are being a loser, you're being ineffectual, you're being not good at whatever you're trying to pursue in order to make me feel bad for you. So therefore we can't criticize you anymore, right? And it's not the like sort of BuzzFeed, Tumblr feminism of like, boys are bad. It's more specifically the idea that like, you are trying to manipulate me by getting me to feel bad for you because you are not successful or not interesting or not emotional, or it's sort of this idea of being like turning masculinity on its head, where you're obviously not every man is supposed to be stoic and like boys don't cry.
Yeah.
But then I think that there is this element where men obviously learn that. I think millennial men, the rise of therapy, Gen Z guys. And so now they're like, okay, well, I'm going to cry on cue. And it's like, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. You're not going to get me. I'm sorry. Like all of the examples that I listed, I was like, you are doing this in order to inoculate yourself from further criticism so that we can't use your failures as an actual cudgel against you.
Kind of separate from the performative male, it just sounds like, you know, they're kind of trying to find comfort in the aesthetics of, you know, maybe being this like enlightened, like cool, emotionally in tune guy.
Yeah.
But he's like not doing that right either. He's not actually doing that work.
Yeah, and to like asterisk that, I'm not saying that all of these men are pathetic because they're not performing traditional masculinity, right? In sociology, you know, gender is a performance, gender is a construct, Judith Butler of it all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I don't want to get like attacked by being like, you have to get a job and you have to wear Carhartt. It's more specifically, I think the combination, like I said, of the performance, where in sociology, Goffman believes that everything is sort of a performance, which is why I ride so strongly for reality TV, where I'm like, yes, you are performing a version of yourself on camera, but like Goffman believes that you're always performing a version of yourself, right? Like the self that you are at work is not the self that you are at home, which is not the self that you are with your partner, which is not the self that you are with your best friend, right? And so I think that what I'm saying is that the performance of this sort of like hangdog, ineffectual, like, I'm so lonely, I'm so sad, I'm such a flop, I'm such a loser, is very calculated in a way to get sympathy from people who date men, sympathy from people who are attracted to men. And also when we live, obviously in the patriarchy, there is this sort of built-in element where it's like, we have to protect him. We have to like, that's baby boy, that's soft boy, that's my rat boy. Like all of these things that we were talking about for the last 2 years are now sort of congealing in this way that it's like, they're getting hip to it and they're using it against us.
It's manipulative.
Exactly. When you date men, you know exactly the type of guy that I'm talking about, where it's like, he's not good at anything and he just needs a hug. He's just a baby. And you're like, that's a 37-year-old man. That's not a baby. Like that's not my baby. That's not your baby. Like, what are we doing here? You know?
Okay, wait. So give me an example of like a man or a fictional character in pop culture that people would know that fits your definition of the pathetic man, and maybe a man in pop culture who might seem like a pathetic man but isn't, just so people can really understand the difference.
Okay, that's a good question. I think maybe the examples that I used were too niche, because I would say Henry on Industry. So Henry is a character that we meet in season 3 who is sort of the picture of professional British success. He is a founder. We learn that he comes from a landed family. His uncle owns all of the newspapers in England. He's a very, very wealthy, sort of protected man, right? Scratch the surface, one layer, literally like an onion, one layer underneath that. Henry is someone who has never worked for anything, has never succeeded at anything, is bad at everything. And instead of using that to motivate himself or to become, you know, more captivating or interesting, or saying like, oh, I should actually try harder at things because my family will always protect me as a safety net, right? I actually am just going to feel sorry for myself. And so women that he comes into contact with are like, oh my God, my baby. And it's like, no, he's doing this on purpose. Like, he knows.
He knows. And by the time they often realize it, it's like way too late. I mean, in literally one of the characters, one of the main characters of Industry literally marries him and is then kind of like, you know, I mean, she thinks she's marrying this billionaire guy who is he's pretty hot, you know? I mean, he's played by the same actor who played Jon Snow, which I didn't watch Game of Thrones. Kit Harington. He's played by Kit Harington. Handsome guy, very charismatic. But like you said, you get one layer beneath the surface. And he's just this ball of want and need and like just just feeling sorry for himself constantly. Right. And yeah, in some ways, I think that kind of draws people in, like you said, draws some of the women in. But by the time they realize that it's like, oh, this is like, there's just more of this. I go layers and layers deeper, and it's just more and more of this abyss of like neediness. It's too late by then usually.
And I think the problem is that when you are sort of attracted to that personality type, there is this marriage of like fixers and people who are comforting, which of course are traits that are associated with femininity in American culture. I'm not saying every woman is this, but like, it is an advantage that these men have, because it's like, well, someone's going to take care of me, right? This is appealing to someone. Someone is going to have this urge to like protect me and comfort me. And so him being a black hole of need, just constantly devouring everything in his path with his like, feel sorry for me, feel sorry for me. Every conversation is about him and his emotions. Every conversation is about his failure. And you are not allowed to exist as your own person because you're eclipsed by his neediness.
Who's like a man that people might think of as pathetic, but doesn't fit this definition?
Okay, so Don Draper is a perfect example because he is someone who, I think because he is such a cipher and he sort of refuses to live in the past for the first 5 or 6 seasons. I won't spoil a lot, but
it catches up with him, but yes.
It does.
Yeah.
But he does attract this personality type, right? Like Megan and some of the women that he dates in between seasons 3 and seasons 5 are attracted to the, I'm watching it right now, that's why.
Okay, I was like, oh my God, I don't remember this 15 years ago. Yes.
They're attracted to this sort of very traditional masculinity where he is like, I feel nothing, but they know that there is something underneath the surface, right? They want to crack that shell. A lot of the women that he dates are like, open up to me, tell me what's wrong with you, tell me how I can help you. And he's like, no. And so because he is not putting on the performance of like, I need you to take care of me, I need you to comfort me, I need you to like
he comes off as rather stoic actually instead. He's
like, I don't need you to do this for me because he's operating under the illusion that he's like a self-sufficient machine, which obviously no human is, right? His life only runs because he has women supporting him, literally. Not financially, but, you know, running his life. All the little minutia of his life. But he doesn't need that element of comfort because he's saying, I don't live in the past, I live in the future, I'm going this way. And so it's not a manipulation tactic to get women to feel bad for him, right? He's able to seduce them with his money and his handsomeness and his job. But the emotional stuff, he's not wielding as a weapon to sort of entrap and ensnare women.
It's interesting. It sounds like what you're describing is like this dynamic that I feel like you're describing a type of man that I hear a lot about in terms of like hetero dating. So like I am married. I've been with my husband for going on 11 years. And so I've been out of the loop for a long time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And something that I saw cresting like as I was like about like in the time right before I met my husband and I was like dating online. And it seems like it has gone full blown. Yeah. But there's a type of guy I think that a lot of women think of as like the 50-50 guy, who I think really what that idea 50-50 is getting at is that like in the past, at least speaking for myself as like a millennial, I'm like 38 years old, not like I am 38 years old. in the past, like a sort of like traditional guy for like my parents' generation, they're like boomers, maybe even like I would say this might apply to like the Jones generation or Gen X too as well, is like a guy who may not be able to offer you much in terms of like emotional understanding and
Yeah.
support in that sense, but he's going to go to work, he's going to make money, he's not going to be asking you for anything like that. Like there, at least if you were not getting your needs met like relationally, you could get your needs met in a very practical way.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of women are responding to now, a lot of women who are looking for a range of like relationship dynamics, right? There's some women who are, because like women who are looking for more egalitarian relationships are complaining about this kind of guy, and women who are looking for traditional relationships are complaining about this kind of guy, because in both senses they're not getting their needs met. So there's this kind of like, okay, well, they're not checking the boxes of traditional masculinity, but then they also want to reap, many men, I'm not saying this is all of them, want to reap the benefits of like financial parity with women. And so it's like, I think a lot of people feel like, you know, that term 50-50 encompasses a lot to them, even if they're coming from different ideas about what they want in dating, because, and I think they use it as short term for basically they're being shafted in some way. They're not getting any of their needs met. And that kind of, I don't know, that sort of dating dynamic, I feel like that has really become very prominent for a lot of women to complain about and talk about.
Yeah.
That fits really closely to me with this idea of the pathetic man. Like he's not meeting any of the traditional requirements for masculinity, and he's also not meeting any of the non-traditional requirements for masculinity. He's just kind of existing in a space where he needs a lot of everything.
I think the neediness is what I really want to hone in on, because it's like, I make a lot of videos because my training is in sociology. I did a master's and my focus was on cohabitation, marriage, and divorce. So I've been literally reading and studying all this data for 10 years. Women, millennial women, so women our age, were sort of given this idea that like we were going to be in these, that you were going to be in these marriages that were like completely egalitarian. And 10 years later, with the oldest millennials being 45, they're now learning that the data for the last 10 years have been saying, well, no, because now women have full-time jobs, but they still have to come home and cook, clean, take care of the kids, help the kids with their homework, do the pickup and the da-da-da-da. And so men's lives haven't fundamentally changed in any real way in the last 20 years, whereas women are like, well, now I have a master's and I have a full-time job and I'm a surgeon and I'm this and I'm that, but I still have to like go to the PTA meeting and I still have to like help Joey with his homework and I still have to like take on another full-time job and
take on the lion's share of those things too.
Exactly.
It's not like, you know, it's not like you're both kind of in the trenches splitting it.
Yeah.
More often women are complaining about the fact that they're taking on
all of it,
like more of the home stuff.
Yeah, it's the second shift of it all.
Yeah.
And so I think in my sort of experience dating over the last 10 years has been, or 15 years? Oh my God. Dating over the last 15 years. It's been interesting because I think you can sort of trace the evolution of the like sort of millennial, like guy with beard, guy with brown boots, guy with tattoos and the slouchy beanie who like loves craft beer.
Describing my husband is very funny. Yeah.
But who like loves craft beer and is like, I love poetry, but he has like a job. And now it's sort of shifted into this weird place where it's like, I need you to support me, capital S, in various ways. And I think that's what I'm trying to warn women about, because obviously this is happening in the gay world as well. But I think what I'm really saying is that I'm trying to warn people against this idea of like allowing yourself to disappear in your relationship by completely centering someone else's needs over your own. And I feel like, unfortunately, this happens a lot. I see it with people who date men. I think my like queer and lesbian friends are marked safe from this phenomenon. I think there, of course, are toxic people who are like, I need you to be completely there for me emotionally.
But there's not that same like societal scaffolding, like you said. Like, we can come up with all these examples in pop culture of that reinforce that this is like that this is like a pathway that a lot of men can take to getting their needs met that will give them success. And also that they're like, you know, that reinforces the idea that there's always going to be some woman there to support this man in whatever he's trying to do.
Yeah. And I think if you want to like zoom out a little bit, the sociology of it all, I think that men don't have a lot of friends. I think the data shows men don't have a lot of friends, and in heterosexual partnership, men sort of outsource all of their emotional needs to their partner. And so if you are dealing with a man who is like, I don't feel good about myself because society has changed so much and I feel like a loser or a flop or a failure, and now I need all of your emotional support 100% of the time, it's like, okay, this is where the trap comes in, right? This is where the manipulation comes in, right? It's like, you are doing this in order to have your needs met, to have all of your relational needs met. And it's like, but what are you bringing to the table? Because you are just a sort of shell taking on all of this emotionality, taking on all of this person's energy, whoever they're in relationship with. And so you're like, but what are you doing? Like, this is what I'm trying to fight against. And I think using pop culture as examples, I said specifically that, like, we are trained in our society that if you date men, their needs have to, and obviously I'm a man, right? But like, and I know this, and have I benefited from this? No, because I date losers. But you are trained in society that if you date men, their needs will come before yours. That we are supposed to, like, sort of keen and fawn and like, oh my God, he's so sad, we have to protect him, we have the poor baby. But like, the whole trope of the sad boy is sort of leaning into this, where I'm saying that now, because they have become self-aware with the rise of therapy, with the rise of like being able to name so many societal ills that have befallen them or that they're blaming on. I'm thinking of men in my life now. I'm like, yeah, the speeches. They are now using that in order to, like, again, entrap and ensnare. And like, I understand that I'm a sort of hard-edged person, that I'm a little bit meaner than the average person, because there is a read on this that it's like, but why aren't we happy that more men are in touch with their emotions? Why aren't we happy that more men are like, I need my partner to be there for me in X, Y, and Z ways? But I also will say, why is it always that their needs come first? Why are they always the main character in the relationship? Why are they always, like, in the fictional sense, why are these stories being centered? And I've talked about this with regards to Bravo. I think that there is this sort of weird double consciousness, like, tension in American society where it's like, all men are evil and all men are out to get you until they actually hurt you, and then it's, they didn't mean to. They didn't know what they were doing.
That's like Vanderpump Rules. There's so many guys on there, whether it's Tom Sandoval or Tom Schwartz or Jax Taylor. I mean, all of these guys have done things. We've watched them do things over the years, whether on Vanderpump Rules or on The Valley, to harm the women in their lives. Lying, cheating, being emotionally abusive, being deceitful, screaming in their faces, calling them names, doing all, saddling them with like housework or childcare, disappearing, sleeping with any and everybody right under their noses, throwing it in their faces. We have seen this. We actually, with our eyes, and that's the stuff that's, made it to edit and made it to air. I mean, I'm not saying that it's guaranteed that there's other stuff on the cutting room floor that we've never seen. But again, if these are the things that we're seeing, that Bravo is comfortable airing, it does make me question, well, what else could be out there? And yet, even within the edits of the show, they're given, like, whenever they engage in their little hijinks or whatever, they're given these little, like the plinky, like piano music that makes it seem like they're going out on some sort of, I don't know, boxcar children adventure. As opposed to being grown men with grown men faculties, who are making really terrible decisions that are harming the people in their lives.
And yet the fandom is still like, I love them. I love them so much. I'm like, this is manipulation. Like, it's shocking to me because I feel like I see it. And obviously this is, again, sociology, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, because everything is a performance, I see the performance. And so many people are just like falling hook, line, and sinker for this thing where it's like, he's just sad. And I'm like, he is sad on purpose to get you. Like, this is what he's doing.
That is how they got you. And listen, I've gotten got. I've absolutely gotten got before.
Why do you think I'm so passionate about this?
Listen, I know, because I've been with my husband for 11 years. But the years before that, the 11 years before that, was a scary time. I wonder. There are all of these like words, like little buzzwords that feel very connected to this archetype of a pathetic man, like a performative male, or like, what is that? The rat boy, or soft boy, or baby girl. All of these terms have been used to also describe different types of male celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking a lot about sort of fictional characters or people that we've seen on like reality television or something like that. But I'm wondering also about the construction of the ideal male that we see in celebrity. Like, how is this idea of a pathetic man like reflected through the changing rules of male celebrity?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I wrote about the whole rap boy, soft boy, baby girl thing at the end of 2025. I think like December 20th, I wrote The Year Men Broke, where I sort of tackled all of the discourse around men not reading and men not graduating and Scott Galloway and all of the articles that we've had about men. And I do think that with celebrity, so Vanity Fair's Hollywood issue this year, for those who don't know, every year Vanity Fair does an issue. It's called the Hollywood issue, and it's a collection of celebrities, and they say this is what is important this year or in the coming year, right?
And they did so many different kinds. I still have like, I think an issue from 2003 or 2004 that was like the young Hollywood issue.
Yes.
So they have like, exactly. They have like different themes for different years. But this year it was like all dudes.
It was all men. And I thought it was interesting. So I did an analysis and I was looking at the careers of all of the men. And I said, 2025 is the year of something about men. We couldn't stop talking about men. But I was like, okay, it's interesting. Jeremy Allen White, who is playing this very like sad man who has sort of risen to prominence being sad, right? Paul Mescal, who has risen to prominence playing very sad men many times. And I said a lot of the men, so Riz Ahmed is interesting because he is like beautiful and sad, but he doesn't get the internet baby girl thing in a way that like this sort of term is reserved for like young white men.
Yes.
And it is interesting how the internet sort of grapples with the idea of like the changing nature of masculinity, right? So I love Glenn Powell, surprisingly. For anyone who is a fan of me, they're like, really? Oh my God. Because Glenn Powell is innately charismatic and very interesting looking. But he is someone who is sort of like, I am vulnerable. I didn't hit it big until I was 35. Like, I am very comfortable talking about failure. I'm very comfortable being this like this sort of marriage between what we expect a Hollywood celebrity to be, right? The sort of Tom Cruise mold of like handsome action star,
and
along
he's like
with
not afraid to show effort,
right?
Which like, you know, being effortful is in many ways like the antithesis of traditional masculinity.
Yeah,
you're supposed to just be able to play it cool at all times. But I think that's that's the thing that ended up tipping me over into being a fan of. What's his name again?
Glenn Powell.
Thank you. I'd be forgetting the combination. But that is what tipped me over into being a fan of Glenn Powell. Is I was like, oh, he's really not afraid to be vulnerable about how bad he wanted to be the guy, and he worked really hard at being the guy, and he wasn't the guy for a long time. And there was something that was very charming to me about that.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. It's like the marriage of this traditional mold, because he is obviously like, he looks like a Hollywood star. He looks like an action star, but he's also very comfortable in this vision of new masculinity where he's like, I'm sad. I have a therapist. I'm vulnerable. I get, I wanted to be famous really bad, and I was a loser for a long time, and now I'm not. And I think that's interesting to me, whereas a lot of the internet sort of grapples with like Josh O'Connor, who I do love, but Josh O'Connor, they're like, he's just so sad. He's just so sad. And I said in the piece, I wonder how these terms sort of protect these men from the actual fallout of their actions, right? Jeremy Allen White had a sort of weird situation where he like got very famous and then immediately left his girlfriend and mother of his child, right?
But like also I think about someone like, say, Michael B. Jordan, who is very much obviously this like sex symbol. But in interviews, he seems to be kind of like a rather reserved guy who loves anime.
Yeah.
But I feel like because of the way that people think about black men and black male sexuality, he's never gonna have that baby girl edge. Even though when you really look at him, it's kind of like
baby girl, but he's not allowed to be baby girl. He's not allowed to be baby girl,
but he's not allowed to be baby girl. It really is for the white guys. I got a question. Okay, so like, I think some people are gonna like hear a conversation or watch our conversation, and think that it's a mean to be calling men pathetic. Especially when, as you mentioned, statistics are showing that men have fallen behind in key areas like education and earnings, relationships. There are some people listening to this that might think, men are in crisis and they need our support and love and understanding and not our judgment. What do you say to them?
I would say, realistically, I would say, I think that there is a question of society has changed so much in the last 20 years that when you bring up these issues of men not attending college and not being employed at the same rates as women and not, succeeding and dying more deaths of despair, and we don't even have to get into like the incel and looks maxer culture, right? This like giant internet black hole that's pulling a lot of young men in and radicalizing them, the radicalization of young men becoming very, very right wing. I think that when you pull out these stats and when you look at the numbers, the New Yorker did a very powerful rebuttal to a lot of Scott Galloway's research a couple of months ago, where the writer, I've unfortunately forgot her name, but the writer was like, all of these things are also true for women. Cosmo did an article in July of last year where they were like, women are also lonely. There's also a loneliness crisis.
No,
because
we did an episode of our show about that, where it's like they were only off by 1 percentage point or 2 percentage points.
Yeah.
They were roughly in the same range generally for population-wide loneliness, men and women.
Yeah.
So it's like, why aren't we?
Yeah. And
why are we worried about women? Yeah.
Yeah, and you're literally like, I'm the horse being led to water. This is what I do on TikTok too. I try to get people to like connect the dots themselves, but like to make it manifest, I will say it very plainly. I think that when you live in a society that centers men, that centers the emotions of men and the needs of men and the wants of men and the successes of men and the triumphs of men and the failures of men, it stands to reason that, of course, when we are in this moment of great societal change, obviously I do a lot of work on the loneliness crisis and like the internet and the way that people are losing their minds because they are so lonely. But like, I keep saying people, right? When you zoom in, the focus on men not doing all of these things, it's also like, yeah, but this is also happening to women. Women are also not, I mean, obviously the numbers are a little bit different, but like women are also like not going to college. They're not getting jobs at the same rates, right? And a lot of these jobs that are desperately needing people, teachers, healthcare workers, restaurants, men don't want to do them. Like people are saying, well, you could do this. You could have a guaranteed job if you get your RN. And they're like, well, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, okay, well, what are we supposed to do? What I'm trying to say in summation, what I'm trying to say is that I want us to look at where we put our attention, right? Attention is a form of love. Where are we putting our attention? Where are we putting our focus? Where are we centering our resources and centering our needs if we are saying this is the most important person in society, right? It's always the young, straight, white man. It's always young men. It's always like, we've been talking about men for 70 years. Like, and I get it. I have a master's degree in sociology. I like trained under like feminists and my concentration was in gender and media studies. Like I know all of the data. We have been talking about men for a very long time, right? Like even like Mad Men and like that, the golden age of TV, right? Mad Men, Breaking Bad, The Sopranos. What do all those shows have in common? They're all about 45-year-old straight white guys and the changing nature of masculinity, right? Like we have been talking about this forever. And I think that when you are putting all of your attention on like, how can we save men? You are leaving out 50% of the population who's also suffering, right?
Yes, there are people who think that maybe femininity is in crisis, but in the grander scheme of things, that is not really a motivator for like social change or social response.
Exactly.
The way that masculinity being a crisis is. And I think that like what that says, right, is that femininity or what it means to be a woman or a gender expansive person, because we all get lumped together. What that means is that can be a lot more malleable. That can be a lot more multifaceted. There can be a lot of room for ambiguity there. What I think might be a better way to think about it is that like masculinity, masculinity is not in crisis, but like the inflexibility of masculinity is a crisis. I think might be a better way to think about it.
That's beautifully said, and I 100% agree. I think what we are sort of touching on in all of these different conversations is that all of masculinity has been changing because society is changing, right? And the sort of pushback against this, I think it's a lot easier to happen with celebrities because there's fewer of them, and so obviously they're hyper visible, but they're not like the regular guy. They're not working at the bodega, right? So we can have a conversation about like, no one is saying that the guy at the bodega is a soft boy, right? And so it is very easy to sort of point to this and say this is a new archetype of man, right? But like the issue is that a lot of men who are just regular guys, like blue collar guys, whatever, aren't shifting. The idea is still like people are in 2026 on social media saying you have to be strong, you have to have a mustache, you have to get a job, you have to take care of your woman.
Too, you mentioned that, this is something that like even like data has shown that like as people who might have lower income or less education might have a tendency to cling more tightly to certain prescribed gender roles between men and women.
100%. Yeah.
But also we are seeing that at the opposite end of the income spectrum. We're seeing that with hyper visible, super rich people.
Yes.
I mean, we see the same thing with someone like Elon Musk,
Okay.
where again, he's constantly talking about, certain men should be doing this, women should be doing that. He's fathering a lot of children with a lot of different women, and a lot of people are thinking that there is some sort of show of masculinity in that decision as well. But yeah, we're seeing this across a broad spectrum of people of different socioeconomic status.
Yeah.
That there is this like obsession. It's not necessarily the majority, but there's a hyper visible obsession with these like prescribed gender roles.
Yeah, and I think to go back to like one of the great scholars of our time, Bell Hooks, was very clear when she said one of the like great issues in feminism is that masculinity is very rigid and inflexible, and the issue isn't to like bow to men and say, okay, we're going to take care of you forever, like you are the center of the universe. What we should all be working towards as a society is understanding that like you are allowed to change, you are allowed to express yourself, right? I think when Harry Styles was painting his nails, I was like, okay, welcome. You know, like this is stuff that we need to like, the Overton window needs to be shifted, even if it's by 5 degrees, just open the door a little bit to new forms of expression, to new forms of existing, right? And I think to loop it all the way back to the beginning, I think when I sort of rail against pathetic men and I say, I think stories about pathetic men in fiction are interesting because they are sort of showing us how these characters are sort of based on real people and how we can keep our eyes open to prevent ourselves from falling into these traps. And I think in real life, it is interesting because I'm like, you understand that you are centering this person in your life and you are making sure that all of their needs are met and all of their emotional needs are met, but like water your cup too, right? Take care of yourself too. And when we're saying that masculinity is rigid and inflexible, this is one of the issues, because if men were able to talk to each other and have more friends and go out more and like have real relationships with one another, they wouldn't outsource all of their emotional needs onto their partners, right? They wouldn't make women and their partners sort of carry this load 100% of the time, where you are then, again, for the third time, entrapped and ensnared because this person is your only person to like manage all of your emotions.
And that's like way too much work for it's way too much work for any one person. Oh my gosh. Well, Josh, thank you so much. I had the best time talking with you about this. Thank you. I am so glad we got to unpack this idea of the pathetic man.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
That's all for today, but stay tuned. We've got more video episodes with even juicier topics coming soon, and you won't want to miss it. Remember to hit the follow button on Spotify and to follow NPR podcasts on YouTube. See you soon.